Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. Okay, so it seems like the combination of high carbs and high fats is the recipe for getting fat. However, if you drizzle your sweet potatoes with MCT oil, you get the satiating and insulin blunting effects of ketones while not wearing the fat, since MCT, unlike other fats, are burned preferentially to glucose. Is this correct? No, that is absolutely not correct. I'm not sure where you got that information from. Coconut oil is mostly medium chain triglycerides, and most of the fats that you consume and that you store are going to be long chain triglycerides. And that includes most of the fat and everything from the meat you eat to your peanut butter, avocados, olive oil, everything else. Those are longer chain triglycerides. But as far as the medium chains not being stored at all, your body can absolutely store those. It can restructure those chains. It can break them down into various lipids and restructure them and store them. Now, they have a slightly higher thermic effect than other fat does. It also is more ketogenic. Your body does tend to turn it into ketones more readily to burn, but you're not going to get the amount of ketones from medium chain triglycerides consuming them in large amounts that you would get from a standard ketogenic diet on its own. Meaning you're not going to get the full hunger blunting effects from a little bit of ketones from some coconut oil on your sweet potato. And so no, I don't think this is necessarily the best method. The other problem there is that basically you're trying to use the medium chain triglycerides as a carbohydrate source. So you're dumping coconut oil on your carbs trying to hope they'll be more carb-like, because it is a more carb-like lipid in some ways as far as absorption, thermic effect, all of that. But it's like you could just eat more sweet potatoes instead and know that you're getting a true carb and still get less fat storage. And the other thing there is that the medium chain triglycerides don't give you a lot of the benefits that you get from fat. Like coconut oil is actually fairly low in a lot of nutrients you want. It's fairly low in the fat soluble vitamins and everything that you want. The reason that you consume fats is so that you can get essential fatty acids, fat soluble vitamins, certain hormonal benefits from the lipid structure of it, but a lot of that you don't get it from the coconut oil, so it kind of turns back into an empty calorie that is basically an almost carb-like fat source. So unless you really just love the taste of coconut oil, it's not really going to give you the effect that you're hoping for there. So again, I'm not sure where you got the idea that you can't store that as fat at all, as a fat, and that it blunts your appetite with ketones, because it doesn't produce enough ketones to do that unless you're consuming like 1,000 calories of it, in which case you're still consuming 1,000 calories of liquid fats. Probably not ideal for body composition purposes, just throwing it out there. All right, next question. How are muscle size and striking power connected? For instance, a fighter like Conor McGregor knocks people out easily but isn't much bigger than the average Joe. Actually, I think Conor McGregor has a good amount of muscle on people who don't work out at all, to be honest. You're just thinking because of his body weight and his overall size that a lean guy like him doesn't have muscle. I can promise you he has a good 15 pounds of muscle on the average non-lifter walking around on the street. Now, as far as striking power and size goes, well, striking power is actually a product of speed strength, which means how fast can you activate muscle fibers through rate coding, which we have a rate coding sequence in your muscle fibers. Power and speed are largely determined by how fast you can activate motor units in your muscle fibers and how fast you can get to those power fibers in terms of microseconds. So someone who's twice as powerful pound for pound can activate their speed strength faster because they can turn those upper motor unit thresholds on at twice the rate per microsecond that someone who's not as fast is. You can do that through training. You can do that, well, number one, through your genetics. Obviously, that's a big factor there because people who have more of those fastest twitch fibers are simply going to be able to train to have more power than other people. That's genetic. You can't get around that. But anyone can improve their speed strength by training for speed strength. That's why things like dynamic effort work exist. That's why people do pause work for power, things like that. Those improve speed strength, which will carry over to striking power. So that's a big factor there. But as far as actual muscle size goes, well, a bigger muscle is still capable of more power. A bigger muscle is capable of producing more force, but someone who has better neural efficiency with their speed strength, like Conor McGregor, they simply turn them on more quickly. But if he had another 20 pounds of muscle on him, his striking power would go up proportionately as well, because he's already stupidly fast with it. And again, it's for Conor McGregor, he's probably very genetically gifted in that regard, meaning he simply has more really fast twitch muscle fibers than the average person, but he's trained himself to use them effectively, which gives him a tremendous amount of explosiveness. But again, anyone can train for more explosiveness, and remember, your explosiveness is still improved by making those muscle fibers thicker. So training for size can improve your potential for power or peak power, but it's not going to improve it directly, automatically, if you haven't trained for it. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, next question. Currently running your linear hypertrophy program to finish off my noob gains. The novice program was just too brutal. I'm at week 2, 170 for squats, 150 for bench, and 170 for deadlifts, all on 10 rep sets. Granted, I still have more room of the program to run, but if progression continues as planned, will I be able to finish out the rest of my noob gains by the end of the program? To answer your question, absolutely. You will absolutely be able to use that program to finish out your noob gains. And because different people have slightly different genetics, some people might actually finish them faster on my linear hypertrophy than they will from the novice program, because the novice program, the recovery end is too brutal for some people, and they end up having some overreaching problems. And for those people, and it sounds like you might have been one of them, the overreaching on it could be excessive for some people, and therefore they're going to end up doing better and actually reach your noob gains or finish them out a little more quickly on the linear hypertrophy program. And I specifically wrote that because some people don't have the recovery ability or the lifestyle to accommodate the novice program, and they needed something that could get them to get everybody there at 90% of the rate the novice program will, which it will do, but some people to get them there faster due to their lifestyle and recovery. Some people have a hectic life schedule, and trying to run the novice program is not going to work. But it sounds like if you're doing okay on it and where your strength is at for now, you're probably 2/3 of the way through your noob gains, from what I can see from the numbers you've posted. So this program, I would say give it 6 months or 2 full cycles of the program, and your noob gains should be finished out. Because again, if you run the program the way it's written, 2 full cycles of it from now, you should pretty well be at my target novice numbers for going into an intermediate program, and you should be good to go. So best of luck with that. All right, next question. I only get to train 3 times a week, and one time I'm really winded after a long day and I don't have the mental focus to squat. Is squatting twice a week then doing some other type of leg glute exercise like a leg press, lunges, and or leg curls acceptable? And if so, what would you recommend? Well, brother, it really depends on what you're trying to do there and what your goals are. I would say that if you're struggling with focus on that one day, you could just reduce the volume and workload. You could come in and just squat a little lighter and with a little less volume and still get some stimulation and train the motor pattern and be good to go. As far as those other things go, again, if you can't focus and you're exhausted, you don't want to come in and do 3 or 4 different exercises that are easier to replace a harder one, unless you're just addressing a weak point. Like if you've got a hamstring weakness, maybe you could come in that day, because it sounds like you're doing some leg curls and maybe glute ham raises or something. What I might recommend is take that day to be a slightly more hamstring dominant day. So come in and just squat a little lighter and then focus more on your hamstring work, like some glute ham raises or something, so that you can maybe bring up that weak point a little bit, and you're not having to squat as heavy, which can be a mental focus issue. Maybe you have that busy day, you work a really long shift on that day, or it's a stressful work day due to certain meetings you have that day. I get that. So come in and just squat lighter and then focus on your hamstrings a little more. There's no need to go over to do the leg presses and other stuff, because honestly, for most people who have a busy schedule and they don't have as much time in the gym and they just want to get the most out of every hour in there, the squat is going to be a better overall exercise. So I don't usually recommend the leg press for most lifters. There are people that I do, but for the majority of fitness enthusiasts, I don't. All right, next question. A quick one. I have seen several people at my gym do deadlifts, and I like how you put it in quotations, by bouncing the weight off the floor. Is this variation that is safe, or are they heading to Snap City? No, bouncing the weight off the floor on a deadlift is one of the stupidest things you can possibly do as far as causing injuries go, and it doesn't matter how many experts or coaches you see doing it, it's moronic. And it is one of the fastest ways to reach Snap City or completely snap your shit up on the deadlift. When you see people talking about being injured on the deadlift, obviously you can do everything right on a big heavy exercise and still get injured. Accidents do happen. Just like you can be a perfect driver out in a car and someone else could hit you and blindside you and you never saw it coming. You can get in a wreck while driving perfectly. The same thing with the deadlift. It's a big, heavy movement, and a small percentage of people who do everything perfect, who program perfect, can still get hurt. But bouncing the weight off the floor is probably the number one cause of injuries on deadlift. That is usually your biggest way that people get hurt doing this exercise. It's stupid. And anyone who does it, that's a great piece of advice right there. Anyone you see bouncing the floor on the deadlift in a video, automatically that person is an idiot. You should never take training advice from. That's a great litmus test. Same thing with the guys at the gym. You see these guys over there who bounce the floor on the deadlift, automatically don't ever take any advice from that person because they're an idiot. But yeah, it's absolutely dangerous. It should be avoided. Please don't do it. And if anyone you care about does it, please tell them stop doing it, that it's fucking moronic. And put it that way. Use that exact term so that you emphasize that to them, that it is fucking moronic. And it is the fastest way to hurt yourself on the deadlift. Number one cause of injuries. All right, next question. Hey Jason, when it comes to recomposition to someone who is newly out of their novice phase, is it possible for someone to go from 15 to 17% body fat to the 12% range and still be able to add 5 pounds a week or every other week to their biggest lifts? And how would someone do so if it's possible? Thanks. Brother, the only way you're going to do that is on steroids. And why do I say that? Because intermediates aren't capable of making those sort of strength gains while losing body weight. And the only way to get from 17% body fat down to 12% body fat is to lose weight, because an intermediate can't gain enough muscle in the intermediate phase to recomposition that much. And here's what I mean. Let's say you're talking about being, 180 pounds at 17% body fat, right? That means you have around 30 pounds of fat on your body. You're going to have to lose 10 pounds of fat to get down to 12%, right? You're going to have to lose somewhere between 10 and 11 pounds of fat. An intermediate can't gain another 10 to 11 pounds of muscle. They're done. They've already gained 75% of the muscle they're going to gain drug-free the rest of their life. They're only going to gain about 5 or 6 pounds of muscle during their entire intermediate phase over the next year or two. So they have to lose weight. An intermediate also gains strength a lot slower than a novice. In fact, about half the rate that a late novice does. So you go back and look at the back half of that. Remember when you were going through your novice phase there, you bulked probably and gained weight on the back half of the novice program. Realize that as an intermediate, the last 3 to 4 months that you gained in the novice phase, you're going to have to cut those gains in half. And that was while bulking and gaining weight probably. So then imagine trying to do that on a cut. And you'll realize very quickly that adding that, you're talking about basically trying to cut and slowly lose weight over a year as an intermediate. And every other week, that's going to be 26 for the year times 5 pounds. You're going to add 130 pounds to all your major lifts in 1 year as an intermediate already. Means you're probably benching, 250-ish. You're probably squatting 350, probably deadlifting well over 400. Now, how are you going to go from a 250 bench up to a 375 bench in 1 year while losing weight? Not going to happen. So you need to reel that in a little bit and realize that if you want to go from 17% body fat down to 12% body fat as an intermediate, probably a more realistic goal to be to hold on to your strength, to be like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 months making this cut, and if I train really hard and smart, I'll still keep all of my strength. I'll still be benching, squatting, and deadlifting what I was benching, squatting, and deadlifting at the start of the cut. But as far as, gaining that, you're still talking about in that time period, putting 50 pounds on your bench press while losing weight. Not going to happen as an intermediate. And again, people you see doing it, there's generally some drugs involved at that point. We're not talking about novice lifters anymore. Novice lifters can pull this off all day long. Intermediates, not so much. And if you can, you're probably not an intermediate. All right, next question and last question of the week. Is it true that doing ultra high reps with light weights can help with the strengthening of soft tissue? Well, I read that on the internet, so it must be true. No, as far as that goes, I've never seen any credible evidence whatsoever that people who are doing these really, really light weights, talking over 20 rep sets, or a weight you're capable of lifting for more than 20 reps, that it actually strengthens connective tissue any more so than doing slightly lower reps, even down in the 8 to 12 rep range. No, I've not seen any evidence whatsoever that it helps with that. In fact, most of the evidence that I've seen out there over the years is that lifting fairly heavy weight actually strengthens connective tissue the most. Lighter weight like that can strengthen connective tissue, but it's subject to debate as to what rep ranges actually increase strength of connective tissue the most in proportion to the actual muscle mass they put on you. It's a subject of massive debate. I don't think it's been fully studied yet, but there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to think that. I think that's something that's a bodybuilding magazine myth that a lot of bodybuilders use to justify doing their ultra high reps with light weight. But the reality is, could it strengthen connective tissue? Possibly, yeah. It could also make muscles bigger and stronger. That's something that's true too. Ultra high reps still have a hypertrophy component to them. You can still gain size doing them. Wouldn't be my first choice, but it certainly works. And if it puts muscle size on, it generally strengthens connective tissue a little bit as well. It's a good rule of thumb to follow. But as far as it being superior in any way, there's no reason why I would think it would be. I'm not sure exactly how they came to that conclusion, the people who put that myth out years ago that circulates still, but I've never seen any evidence whatsoever that there's any truth to it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.